Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today for this special edition of NAMI's You Are Not Alone conversation, talking about mental health and talking with creative and influential people who have experiences with mental health. However, today we are so lucky to be joined by the cast and crew from a beautiful, beautiful show called David Makes Man that's on OWN, which is the network, cable network with Oprah Winfrey. And this show is truly phenomenal. And I'm really happy to be joined by some wonderful guests today. So we are so fortunate to be joined by Kwame Patterson, as well as Akili Mcdowell, as well as Terrell, Alvin Mccraney, and D. Harris Lawrence. If you don't mind, everyone, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourselves and your role on the show? And we'll start with you, Akili.
Hi, I'm Akili Mcdowell. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I play young David.
And Kwame.
Hi, my name is Kwame Patterson. I play older David, and my pronouns are he, him, his.
And we have D. Harris Lawrence.
Hi, I'm D. Harris Lawrence. I'm the showrunner of the show, and my pronouns are she, her, her.
And last but certainly not least, Terrell Mccraney.
Hi, I'm Terrell Alvin Mccraney. I am the creator and executive producer of David Makes Man, and my pronouns are he, him, his.
So again, thank you so much for joining me today with this conversation. I think it's really great that we're talking about the show today, especially as we approach BB More National Mental Health or National Minority Mental Health Month. And the show focuses on childhood trauma and being a survivor of childhood trauma. And for our audience today, I was wondering, Dee, would you mind sharing with us a little bit about what the show is about and some of the topics that it addresses?
The show David Makes Man is about, young David, played by Akili, at least the first season, played by Akili, who deals with a childhood trauma that he uses his imagination to try and overcome, as he's also trying to traverse his neighborhood and as he's going into another neighborhood to go to school. Second season picks up with older David, where he now is living his life, from all, from everything that you see, he looks successful, etc. But he still is dealing with, because he's never really dealt with the childhood trauma he went through. So it is, though the family and everyone around him has moved on in a way, older David is trying to figure out how to move on, still being successful, but you see how things have, and how he goes about his business and everything, how he creates certain, problems and chaos to solve them. And he doesn't need to have certain tools anymore to go forward and just live. It's just something that he still holds on to. And it's about his journey and trying to let that go.
And one of the great things about this show is that it talks about how helpful and the utility of therapy, which is something that often isn't talked about within the Black community, and especially when it comes to Black men. The idea of seeing therapy portrayed on TV is something rare that we see, especially with Black men. And so, Terrell, I would love to hear a little bit more about the role that therapy plays in the show and how it may resonate with a lot of the viewers.
Thank you so much, Dr. Crawford. We, very early on, we knew that we were going to talk about childhood trauma, but via just looking at, even the show's title, it's you already get the plot. It's this young man who is trying to make himself into a man or to an adult by trying on and putting on all these various parts of himself. And that is triggered or heightened or spurred forward by a tragedy in his life, watching the death of a very close friend. And, rather than try and escape what happened to me during that time. I thought one of the ways that therapy was introduced to me was via school. I had a series of moments where a counselor thought I was depressed and sent me to a therapist in the school. And I had to be in 6th grade, and that changed perspective on a lot of things. And I don't know where I would have been without that moment where someone interceded on my behalf and said, you know, you may be dealing with something that's larger than what your 6th grade math book can teach you. And so there's some other skill sets that you might have to gain in order to move forward. And so we really wanted to show that learning process can start early. And also, as you'll see in season 2, it's never too late.
Absolutely. And the fact that you touch upon the usefulness of being in therapy from a young age in 6th grade. And I'm so happy to hear that within the school environment that you were in, it was something that was brought up and that you were introduced to at such a young age. Because for a lot of young people, it isn't on the radars of a lot of educators within the school. If they come across a kid who may be having some difficulty or challenges, they oftentimes are labeled as a problem child or something's wrong with them, rather than trying to explore what is kind of lying underneath what it is they're seeing in the classroom and some of the challenges there. And so I think that talking about child mental health, the role of therapy early on, and how it can alter someone's entire trajectory, especially as they enter into adulthood and find that identity for them. Akili, you know, I wonder, you know, given your role playing young David in this show, and playing someone who is in therapy, I wonder what that was like for you. And, you know, growing up, was therapy something that was discussed, and were you able to draw upon some personal experiences as you were portraying some scenes for that character doing therapy?
In season 1, you know, we see David begin therapy, and his mom, you know, gives him the go ahead and grants him, lets him enroll in therapy, and that continues throughout season 2. You know, and we just want to continue to stress that importance. Like Terrell said, it's never too late, and there's nothing wrong with it. You know what I'm saying? There sometimes could be a stigma that Black people, it seems like it's something wrong with therapy. You know what I'm saying? But if you need it, you need it, no matter what age or color or race or ethnicity, anything like that. But no, myself, I haven't been to therapy. But if I need it, like I said, I'm open and willing to go.
Mm-hmm. And you talked about stigma and how that can make it difficult for folks to want to go into therapy, and especially stigma within the Black community. We know that it exists, and it really makes it challenging for people to see therapy as an option for them. Kwame, I'm curious to hear from you when it comes to stigma in the Black community around mental health, and especially around Black men. I'm curious to hear about your thoughts as to what contributes to that, and what are some things that can be useful to overcome some of that stigma.
I'm glad you asked. I think that the biggest problem that we deal with is that, and I was just having this conversation with a friend a couple of days ago, is that we are conditioned to, from the time we're young, to be tough. You know, when you're getting whooped by your mom, or your dad, the first thing they're saying is to you, stop crying. You know, I'll give you something to cry for. You know, you fall and scrape your knee on the ground. You know, like I say, somebody's telling you stop crying. You know, man up. You know, you a kid, but they're telling you to man up. You know, and be tough. It's okay. So you're having pain inflicted on you, but somebody's telling you to stop crying, to stop being emotional. Don't show your feelings. Be strong. And those things carry with you throughout your life. And then we as men, we build these walls, you know, and then we start to bury stuff deeper inside. So then when we get older, and now when we start to deal with people, whether it's relationships, whether it's romantic relationships or just regular relationships, we don't express our feelings the way we would have normally done because somebody has told us not to. You know, if you cry, you're soft. You know, me personally, I never cried except for death, you know, and doing David Makes Man, I've never gone to therapy, but doing David Makes Man was like going to a free therapy session in a master class, because it unlocked so many different emotions, and it helped me break down so many walls and barriers that I had inside myself that I didn't even realize that I had. You know, I remember doing a scene with Kyle Adrian Scott, our director, and after the scene, I couldn't stop crying. You know, and the scene was over, it was cut, but I couldn't stop crying because I had tapped into something, and the emotions wouldn't stop. You know, and so, I think it made me personally realize that going to therapy can be really helpful. It can be a good thing. You know, it can be a blessing. And so, we hope that people that are watching the show can also take away from that, and be, more vigilant about, working on their mental health, seeking therapy, and being understanding to other people who are, and don't be judgmental. You know what I'm saying? Like, just keep an open mind to what somebody might be going through. And we don't know what they went through in their past or what they're going through right now, because that's the problem. Is like people are so judgy. Oh, you going to therapy? Oh, and then it makes you not want to go because like, oh, I don't want people to talk about me. I don't want people to think that I'm crazy, things like that. So yeah, that was just my thoughts.
Yeah, and you touched.
Okay, go ahead, Dr. Crawford.
No, please, Terrell, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say to Kwame's point. I think when we say stigma in the Black community, I think we do sometimes do ourselves a disservice, because I know that there are Black people who are in certain tax brackets who don't think of therapy as a stigma. And I don't know that, and I don't know from my neighborhood that in lower class folks that they, or lower class or lower income folks, working class, thought of therapy as a stigma, as more of an obstacle, something that they couldn't necessarily afford, something that was going to drain money where the resources were already scarce. So there's a scarcity model, right? And and people in a scarcity model don't have the quote unquote luxury to think about their feelings. They don't have the luxury. So that, is part of the reason why, and I'm not, again, there's no part of me, I agree with Kwame, there's no part of me that wants to defend folks being like, don't cry, man up, right? That language is, it's alienating. It stifles us from connecting to our feelings. At the same time, we have to remember, and some of the stuff in therapy that I've had to really look at is look at my parents and going, oh, they were babies raising a baby, one, in a society that was telling them to stuff down their feelings because in order to survive. And a lot of that is what we talk about in David Makes Man. Like, what is he doing in order to survive? What is he putting on? What is he trying on? What tools is he putting up? And how Kwame said, you get to a grown person, you walking around trying to survive, and then suddenly something happens and opens you up. And you're like, wow, I didn't know all of this even existed in there, right? But we walk around still using those same outmoded reactions, those same outmoded tools. And I think that's even more than stigma, because again, Black people are the coolest people on earth. So we don't mind being different, right? If it's just a matter of somebody being like, well, you different. People love that. They made a song about it, right? Like, I'm different. Like, literally people, that's what we enjoy being, the outlier and the cool one. But there are other things involved, right? If I'm vulnerable, if I'm allowing my feelings to come out, does that put me in danger? Real harm, right? And if we're living in a society that says maybe, right, if you're a Black woman and you do happen to get upset, and that means everybody starts painting you as a Black woman, right? Does that shorten your ability to engage in financial growth, right? Or do you get blacklisted because of that? Like, those are real challenges that are in the world. And so I think a lot of what people are nervous about is, can I afford to tap into those scary places, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well said. And it's not only can you afford to be able to explore those parts about you and to be vulnerable, but is there a space that's safe for you to fully explore that? And we've been socialized to believe that there aren't a lot of safe spaces for us to fully explore the full range of our emotions and what triggers certain emotions and how to develop skills and tools to help maintain emotional wellness. And so oftentimes when people think about therapy, they think of it as a luxury for the worried well. But I think one powerful thing about this show is that you're demonstrating that therapy is accessible to everyone, particularly people in the Black community. And getting that help and support early on, starting in childhood, is such a gift because often that gift is denied for a lot of people in the community. And it's denied because of the safety reasons that you had mentioned, the prejudice, the discrimination that people oftentimes face when they do try to seek out care, and when they're actually in care, they may be worried about being judged, and also being told that, especially for Black men, crying and showing the vulnerable aspects of you is quite challenging. You know, Dee, I'm curious to hear from you, especially, you know, as we're talking about therapy, mental health, and in the Black community. One of the other things that often comes up too is the role of the church and some community resources that we have in place, as well as family members. And so I'm curious about your own experience when it comes to talking about mental health and some of the responses that you get from people within your community.
And that's a great question. I mean, originally, I mean, my family's from New Orleans. So of course, growing up in the church, you know, everything, all the answers were supposed to be in church. You know, I had to go to Bible school, you know, anything, you know, it was just all the answers were in church. And I think when Kwame and Terrell were talking, I was thinking, okay, did I ever, because I am not a crier, I am not someone who is very open with feelings. And I do think it's about and how you grow up. And I was trying to think, you know what, I have I never saw my grandmother cry, not one time. My grandmother lived till 93. Even at funerals, even at her own son's funeral. I remember just watching her. And I think I ended up modeling myself in that way because there was always so much to do. There was always so much to accomplish. There was like, there is no time for that. And at one point, I think I told Terrell's like, I feel like I've been missing out because you know, as we've been doing shows about mental health and you know, seeking therapy, I'm like, maybe I need to go to a therapist. I need to talk to somebody. But I was always someone that, you know, some friends came to talk to. But I do think what is great about this show in showing how, you know, from a young age, it is okay to have feelings. And I hope in how we are doing as far as the education system, because I do think because of this pandemic, the education system is going to get revamped in a lot of places, that you know, there'll be mental health counselors that are there for kids instead of just regular counselors. Because I don't think so that kids can go and be safe with, you know, because I think that's a major thing that needs to happen now. And you know, in going with the show, it actually taught me a lot about mental health, not about stigmas, but that it's not about being a luxury. We, you know, we see a lot when we're growing up in different neighborhoods, and we have a tendency to stuff it down. The way I dealt with it probably was books. I read, I watched television, and I guess it was fantasy, going into fantasy land or learning and having knowledge. You know, everything that I needed to know, I would find them in books for myself. So I think that was part of it growing up. And then there was Bible school. And, you know, until I started at about 13 or 14, questioning things. Because, you know, things like the picture of Jesus that you saw on the wall, I remember saying to my mom, I don't understand. In the Bible, it says Jesus had woolly hair. Not at one point did they say Jesus stood out from everybody else. So I don't understand where this Jesus comes from with, blonde, blue eyes. And she would go, well, you need to go talk to, Reverend Hardy, or you need to go talk to Reverend, and they would have this explanation that still didn't make any sense to me. So again, you went to your pastor for all these different questions and that, and they weren't giving you the answers that you needed. So you're right, there does need to be a mental health component to it.
Absolutely. And it starts with having models for what it
Mm-hmm.
means to maintain emotional wellness and how to process some of the things that you're seeing, especially as a young child, some of the things around you that don't make a lot of sense, that really stick with you. And it's hard for some people to look to adults who are modeling effective ways and coping strategies for dealing with a variety of mental health symptoms. And especially with this pandemic, being on, it's been a difficult year. And I feel like people have a little bit more empathy as to what it is like to experience symptoms of depression and anxiety. But now is the time to think about what resources you can put in place for yourself to be able to stay well, especially for young people who are going back to school, and making sure that young people, the teachers, have the tools that they need to make sure that people stay well. And Akili, I'm curious for you, being the young person on this call, and it's a challenging year for everyone, but what do you think are some of the things that for young people in particular, especially from the show, that they hopefully can learn from what is being portrayed on the show, especially when it comes to mental health?
What I really want to take young men to take from this show, personally, I feel like honestly, it's okay to still be finding yourself and identifying yourself as a man. You know what I'm saying? And David is still doing that in season 2 as well, and really changing the narrative what exactly a man is, or you know what I'm saying, and having these discussions to hopefully just open things up. You know what I'm saying? Just open it and let us have this discussion. That's what I really hope.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think one nice thing about this show is that we're able to get a sense as to what David is going through, thinking about when he's going through all these different challenges. And especially with Black men, on the surface, it may seem like everything is okay, but beneath the surface, there's a lot more that's going on, and a lot more that's being processed. Um, Terrell, I'm curious to hear from you about the fact that that process, it continues even when you're an adult. It doesn't stop after a couple of therapy sessions, but it's ongoing. I wonder for you, when you talk to other people about therapy, what are some of the responses and reactions that you get from those around you?
I think, one of the great things about, my circle of friends is that, I have them, first of all. And as Akili said, a support group that reflects and lets you know that whatever stage of healing and or identity you are at is the right place to be, right? Wherever that is, you already are. And I think they're very supportive. Some of them go to see therapists themselves. Some of them don't, and have counsel in other ways and find healing in other ways. And I think I just wanted to also talk about something that happens a lot, and the forgiveness that like we have to give to ourselves, because a lot of times, especially, and it's one of the main things that we point out in David Makes Man, it's like, how do we, without the resources, get from point A to point B? Like, how do we survive in the meantime without the resources, without someone who is a coach, someone who is a model, as you said, Dr. Crawford, someone to model ways. And we see in season 1, David sort of picks Sky as that person. Even though Sky is no longer with him, he uses the thoughts, the words, the wisdom, the experiences he has with Sky as a kind of, rubric and or metric to go through life. And he keeps measuring up moments via Sky's point of view. And I think, as people, growing up in neighborhoods where people didn't have those sort of resources, you see a lot of coping mechanisms like that. Who do people pick? What rulers do they use? And then at some point, as you said, that kind of gets old, right? Like it doesn't work as much, but we still keep using it because it's gotten us so far, right? And so for me, a lot of what I go through, and a lot of what's happening in season 2 of David Makes Man, is people going, hey, you don't need to do that anymore, right? You don't, that way of figuring out how to solve that problem, you actually can let that go, right? You're not in a situation that's life or death right now, right? Or whatever you thought of as life and death at the moment, right? The way in which your 15-year-old self processed this is not the way your 30-year-old self needs to. And so, I continue to have those conversations with folks around me and in the work. And I think the reaction to folks, even myself, is that when someone reminds you that, you kind of take a breath, go, oh, thank God. Right? Like when someone goes, hey, you actually, you can say no, right? You can set a boundary and like walk away from that. And Kwame and I had a conversation about this before when we were talking about just as getting to know each other, but talking about just walking around the street. And people can be so aggressive to people, especially Black men. And again, like you were talking, where's our safe space, right? Certainly it's not always walking down the street. So people, but I have gotten, I'll speak from a place of I've gotten to a place where someone is provoking me from across the street and yelling. I can be like, yeah, cool. It's cool. Whatever it is, you know what I mean? Whatever it is you're yelling, as long as you aren't physically harming me, I'm sure something in your day, your life, your years, is making you feel that you need to do that. And that's cool. I know that I'm okay and I'm safe here, right? But I would be lying to you if there's not a 15-year-old in me going, no, this is dangerous. You need to go right now, right? You need to go over there and do something about it because it's dangerous and it's going to get you, right? I have to tell myself, actually, you're okay. You can cross the street or stay on this side of the street and keep it moving, right? And so a kind of relief comes when you talk to other people who are doing that kind of work as well, who are looking at situations and going, oh yeah, no. I still feel that feeling somewhere in me, but I also have the feeling that I can talk within myself and know that I'm okay, and that I don't have to engage in things that are, traumatic, scary, dangerous.
And certainly in season 2, we're looking forward to seeing more of that from David. And Kwame, would love to hear, as we're wrapping up the conversation, about any parting words that you want to make sure to leave with our audience watching today, and especially the audience that will be watching you come season 2.
I think pretty much kind of what we all just already been saying is just doing your due diligence, with your mental health, understanding that therapy is a safe place, like you're saying, trying to get rid of the stigma and just, and then also outside of the mental health, just in life, to artists and people out there, who are pursuing something, just be relentless in what you do. You know what I'm saying? Just have a drive and just work at it and just have a hard work ethic. You know what I'm saying? So if you're trying to be an actor, a writer, a singer, director, producer, whatever, just be relentless. You know what I'm saying? Every no is another chance for a yes, and so that's how you look at it, and that's it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today. We got Dee, Akili, Terrell, and Kwame. Thank you. Everyone, make sure to check out David Makes Man on the OWN network. And we're coming from NAMI. Check out NAMI.org. We have incredible resources on our website. Also follow us on Twitter at NAMI Communicate, as well as on Instagram at NAMI Communicate as well. Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Crawford.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you for
Crawford.
having us.